Awesome. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. Wow, this is a fantastic turnout. Someone at the front door. Got someone looking at me. This is amazing. I really appreciate turning up tonight and coming in person. This has been 2 years in the making. So hope you enjoy the night. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We are filming tonight and taking a few photos. If you don't want to be in any photos or video, that's cool. Just let myself know, or Dean, our wonderful videographer. Just let us know. That's awesome. All right, so can we get a show of hands? Who here is, who's first time at DesignOps meetup tonight? Okay, cool. All right, about half. Awesome, welcome. We've got a few familiar faces as well. A little bit about our meetup. So my friend Adam and I met while we were working in advertising in Adelaide, and then we moved on, as you do, advertising. Vicious beast in the place. Adam and I kept in touch. We used to go for ramen every other week and share stories about agency life and our love for Adobe Photoshop, the whole Adobe products. We really created this meetup almost 5 years ago. I think LinkedIn we called it 5 years, but we'll say almost 5 years. We wanted to create a platform to share stories, and we were sharing ramen and having stories like, oh man, we need to open these conversations up. So that's really what it's about, is bringing the community together. We saw a bunch of design meetups and developer meetups. They were quite separate, so we thought, hey, we're not joining the two disciplines, we work together. So, and hey, if you're in product as well, come along and magic traffic. So that's what it's all about. Adam's gone on to build a company creating Figma plugins. It's called Hypermatic. So if you haven't seen it, you may have used some of these plugins. They're awesome. If you haven't, go and check out hypermatic.com. I promise you will spend less time trying and time designing. They super speed up efficiency, so go and check it out. A quick shout out to World Design System Week. This event was going to be run in conjunction with this new initiative, Global World Design System Week. Obviously, we had a public holiday the other week out of nowhere, so here we are tonight. All right, changing hats for a moment, introducing the REA side of things. My name is Charlie, I'm a designer. Been working on our design system team here at REA for the last 4 years. And just before we get into things, I would like to do a shout out that we, along with every other company in the world, are hiring. We're hiring in design, in engineering, and product. Go to reagroup.com/careers, check out our open roles. Might even have a few of our talent acquisition stuff floating around, so come and speak to them or myself. Check it out. Also, just before we jump in, I'd like to share a short video of two of our product designers, designers Johnny and Jerry, sharing a day in life of what it's like being an REA designer. So just a quick video to share with you.
Hi, I'm Jerry.
And I'm Jolly.
Join us in a day as product designers at REA.
Let's go!
Since I'm working from the office today, I woke up early, got ready, and took the train in. Before I started working, I caught up with my design mentor, Inez, and we had breakfast together. I wonder what you're up to, Jolly.
Hey, I'm working remotely today, so I can sleep in a little bit. Usually my cat Miffy greets me when I wake up. I grab my breakfast and stroll into my work from home setup. Yes, it's cat themed. Okay, anyway, work time. I usually catch up with my product manager and team in the morning.
Oh hey, me too. I had a design critique session today to get feedback from my team.
Nice. Sometimes we also have design jams with other designers. Speaking of designers, hey.
Oh hey Jolly, are you coming into the office?
Look behind you.
Oh sh**.
Anyway, what have you been working on lately?
Well, we've been trying to learn how people are interacting more with our products through the power of data. We've also been spicing up the website with some new branding. How about you?
Bling, bling, bling. I've been uplifting our design system with new font and styling. Look at all these components. Woo! Now teams can just grab these and chuck them into the experience without worrying about the detail.
Now, after a long day of work, it's time to shut down my computer and run off to have some fun with my design fam.
Yeah, I like how we can just hang out after work. Damn that bingsu though, yum!
And that's been a day as product designers here at REA. Hope you enjoyed. See you later.
Bye!
So fun. How cool is it? Like, that's the new way of working, right? So yeah, it's really cool. All right, that's that side of things. I guess you're probably all here wondering how our design system team saved the company 320,000 hours. I guess you are if you're in product, and if you're a designer or developer, you probably want to see some about what's in our system. Tonight we're really excited to share our journey over the last 4 years. We'll be talking about getting buy-in, unlocking creative vision, and the analytics tool that we built to show return on investment. All right, so presenting with me tonight, I'm joined by team members who will also be sharing their stories shortly. We have Rafan, Alice, and Chris. So we'll hear from them tonight. All right, so jumping in, taking you back to, say, 2018, our design system started like most design systems start, with a passionate group of people. We're not dedicated to that team specifically. They just want to design and build things faster and more efficiently. And of course, you've probably seen that model and breakdown. Without a dedicated team, you're a team, the system tends to break. So we had a product manager who saw this pattern, and he made it his mission to get buy-in and create a dedicated design system team. So we thank him for that. Thank you, Mick. He's sitting front row here. So that was the team, and this is where I entered as the first designer. We were a small team of 4. And we've come a long way. So today, this is what our team looks like. We're a 13-person team. We have a dedicated product design manager, tech lead, delivery lead, and then creative resources designers across web and Android and iOS, as well as developers. So our team's really grown in the last 4 years, which is super awesome. So taking a step back in our history, this is our documentation side, our doc side, as we call it. This is 2018, this is version 0.1.0, our first sort of real live, internal live, go-live version of our doc site. We do it in changelog and version control, so you can go back and look at, go back in history and look at a point in time, and kind of neat to see sort of how we progressed and what components we had and how the site looked. So jumping ahead today, this is our nice, shiny new documentation site. We have theming, so that allows us to have light dark mode. We have a cool feature of search, so you can jump and find any component you're looking for, a bunch of other cool features. Rifan's going to take you through a demo of our doc site shortly, so I won't steal all of his thunder. We'll take you through and show you what that looks like. So once again, looking back, I'd like to talk about unlocking creative vision. So many people, when we talk about design systems, often the conversation comes up around, stopping creativity. But rather, I'd like to share the story tonight on how our design system enabled a vision and creativity. So this is our homepage of our website, realestate.com.au. This is 1 year ago. And sure, the site works, it's functional, not too bad, gets millions of users, but hadn't been updated for about 5 years. And we wanted to give it an uplift and take it to where we were today, giving us that brand to reflect our personality where we are today. So you have a look today, this is our live site, the homepage and the experience. And this is where we went with our design system, we're able to unlock this vision. So I'd like to share a little bit of that journey with you. We went on the journey to make a big change. So at this point, we were about 3 years into our design system, so quite mature and strongly adopted across our company. Really awesome. We had a great experience where the design system got organically adopted, so it was super lucky in that respect. So unlocking creative vision, we wanted to make a change. So we wanted to make a change to our product, the whole look and feel of our homepage and our entire experience across web and app. So to do that, obviously without a system, you've got a big job ahead of you. With a design system, if you make a change in the system, then it's a lot easier. So I'd like to share how we did that. So we went on the journey to do an experience hub. And to share a bit of our creative process, we took inspiration from our land, lifestyle, and moments. We wanted to take that and make it reflect our brand. We had 7 different fonts across our experience. Can anyone relate to that? Does anyone have 7 or more fonts in their experience? Show of hands, anyone? A few. There might have even been Comic Sans in the mix. It was a nightmare to typographic experience. So we went on the journey to select a new font. We landed on REA Group. We collaborated with the Font Foundry in Germany and collaborated with them to tweak it to make it uniquely ours. And we think it looks really beautiful in our product. So that's where we are today. Once again, with colour, we wanted to take that inspiration from our land and convey and capture that atmosphere, bring it into our product, bring it into our UI. So this was our existing colour palette. So a few gaps there, and this was the new palette. So back a little bit, you can see there's plenty of gaps in sort of the secondary palette, and this is a design system talk, so we've got some micro detail here. You'll notice even the foundational colours have changed. Not REA Red, even though REA Red has its own Twitter account, because we once had about 50 different shades of REA Red, our core brand colour, in our experience. But we think we've fixed that with our design system. I think we've got consistency and nice coherent experience. But this is our new palette, and we wanted this to reflect our personality and our brand. So this is a snapshot of our components in our design system. This was, like I say, about 3 years in, so pretty good. And then we go, so I'll click back a little bit. This is where the new creative direction applied. Once again, we are a design system talk. Our team has talked about corner radius for a day, the entire team. So let's not do our sake on that. So here we are. We think this has enabled us to unlock that creative vision and really bring our brand where it is today into that really nice convey our personality. So that's how we use our design system to unlock that creative vision. Okay, I'm going to pass over to Rufan now to talk a bit more about what's in our system. Take it away, Ruf.
So I'm super excited to see how much we've grown in the last 4 years. Apologies though, that might have been my fault bringing Comic Sans into the mix. So anyway, I'm glad that we move on from that. And we basically have REA Page as our font style now. It's a much better space. I'm looking forward to what's in the future. Sorry, I'm not used to mic. The last time I had mic on my hand was when I had a karaoke session. So I hope you guys enjoy the pizza. I'm not sure if it's enough for everyone, but since we're talking about that pizza, just before I go into this talk about design system in details, let's ask who put pineapples on their pizza. Who likes pineapples on their pizza? No judging, you can be honest. So if you are a DesignOps talk and you're wondering, why is this guy asking you guys about pizzas? Well, it's actually quite related. So if you talk about what's in the system, it's pretty similar to what we make our pizzas, right? We've got different type of toppings, some like pineapples, some like olives, some like salamis. So basically what I'm about to show you next is not the only way of you building a design system. There's so many different ways of building a design system out there, but as us in REA, we believe there are a few ingredients that we've used the last 4 years and they're working quite well, and I'm about to show you what those ingredients are. So in here, basically we have design, and the part in the middle is code base, and the last bit is documentation. So if you can see here, the first thing that we use is Figma. So the last 2 years, we're quite fortunate that we've been using Figma, obviously, as we move on to remote working. That's been really helpful to be able to work remotely from home and still contribute and improve our design system. Whether or not we're going to be sticking with Figma in the next few more years, I'm not quite sure. I know you heard about the recent years. I don't want to talk about it too much. But we'll keep it at Figma right now. The bit in the middle, that's the story that Chan said earlier. We obviously started 4 years ago, we brought in web platform into our system. And just about a year and a bit as well, we introduced native platform into our design system. And I'll talk a little bit about that a bit later. So this is just sort of to represent your web, iOS, and Android. And now you might be wondering, what is that shiny looking thing on the right-hand side? You might have not seen that before, but that's actually our logo for design system. So we call ourselves Constructed, as John said, and especially just where we post our documentations, that where you see your content guidelines, your accessibility guidelines, everything in details on how you use our design system. Now, I'm just going to show you quickly. I know this might be very small now that I notice for people at the back, but I'm going to do a bit of demonstration of this. So this is just how we set up our design library in Figma. So there's no secret sauce or recipe to it. We just have done it just as how Figma has suggested. If there is component properties, we use component properties. If there's variant, we use variants. So there's no big secret around it. But the reason why I want to bring this up around the three key principles, design, code, and also documentation, is because of this story of a button. So I'll tell you a bit of story. So 3 years ago, I joined REA. So you would have thought as a designer, designing a button, it should be an easy task. But honestly, it's actually super underrated. 3 years ago, I remember checking our platforms in iOS, in Android, and also in web. We had, like John said, 50 different shades of red. We've got buttons with different radiuses. We've got buttons in different font sizes. So obviously, 3 years later, when we started basically mixing design token into our design system. So for those of you who doesn't know what design token is, it's basically, think about it as a nickname that you put into a value. And I'll talk a bit about that a bit later. So the beauty about design system backed by design token is no longer that we also save hours of development and design, but we can also create a clear communication across product, design, and also development. So if you can see here from example, if you look at that button, so rather than just calling a button that E400 to the hex code color, we put a nickname and call it background brand static. The same way here as what you see for our type, we call it subtitle 01, and the color of that label is text inverted static. And this token is basically duplicated across design in Figma, in web, iOS, and Android. So the next time someone comes in and wants to design a button, they can just mention this nicknames or tokens, and we can be 100% confident, hopefully 100% confident that we won't make a mistake anymore. Well, if someone's still making a mistake, I might set a one-on-one meeting with them after this. Anyway, I'm going to do a bit of demonstration now on how this connects to our doc site. So if I just open, sorry, that's not what I was trying to show you. If I show you this thing, so I'll just zoom this in so you can see it a little bit. So this is how we basically set up our design components. So on the left-hand side, you can see all the pages, and this is just an example of how we design a button. And the beauty about this is if you click on this component, you can sort of hook it up to the documentation or any URL, and we hooked it up with our documentation. So if you basically click on this view documentations, from that button, it then takes you to our doc site that explains a bit more about how you actually use buttons. So within our doc site, we've got examples on how we might use button. So this is all the different variant implementation that you can do. Obviously, we also have usage guidelines here that basically hooks it up right away to Figma. This is just some examples of how we might show do's and don'ts when it comes to using certain components. And we've got accessibility. We make sure that all our components that we built in our design system basically hits all the accessibility points. And lastly, this is an API docs where we basically developers put in all the different prompts so that developers can check what's available in that component. And since we recently introduced native into this doc site as well, you can here see a toggle where you can switch between the three platforms. So we're in web now. If you click at Apple, now we are basically looking at the button in iOS here, and the same way if you click on Android, it's basically automatically taking you to that. Just quickly to show you, because all our documentation is actually baked into the design token, it allows us to enable theming, and that way we can toggle between light mode and dark mode. So if I come here, we can see here the layout here is in dark mode, and we basically toggle that back onto light mode. It shows you that difference. I think I was meant to talk for only about 7 minutes. I might be running out of time, but if you click the like and subscribe button, I might be able to. But let's move on to the next part of it, something that's quite personal to me actually. So it's about bringing native design platform into our design system family. So this is an interesting journey. So I'll just show you here sort of the timeline. So John mentioned 2018, John and a few other groups of people started constructing. Obviously at the time we started with the web platform, but then in 2020, November 2020, myself and a few other people in the community have started talking about it, seeing how the web platform has started to get adopted in the business, and people are really wanting to have a native design system. Myself and a few other people started talking about it. And just a bit less than a year, in April 2021, when myself and a few other engaged mobile community finally released our first code base and design system. And at the time, I believe when we released Foundation, so we released our type, our colors, and everything was just amazing, because throughout that process, we didn't have an official team. So it wasn't the easiest for us to actually work together and actually bring this into the family. But yeah, fast forward, October 2022 now, we've got an official team that basically just works on the native platform in the design system. We've got a native website, as I showed you earlier, and obviously people have started to adopt it in the business as well. So now we might be asking, so how did you start it? Like if you haven't had an official team, like how did everything go about? So like you can see from these photos, you might see there are similarities across all the photos. Not my face, but it's all the engaged people across the mobile space. So I was quite fortunate that our mobile developers were super engaged, and they were all super excited, and they were also keen to basically bring in a native design system. We understood that with design system, a native design system, we could create a more succinct experience across web and native. So looking at where we are at today, so basically here right now, myself and a few other native developers in our team, we are now an official team. We've got 2 iOS developers, 2 Android developers that are working in making my design dream a reality. And basically now, moving forward from now, we want to replicate the success that we had in the web platform and bringing that into the native platform. So we are hoping that although in the past, our focus was mainly to support the visual uplift experiences, we wanted to make sure that our vision is for the wider mobile community and REA to actually benefit from it. So we believe that having a native design system helps in creating that consistency across web and also native platform. It also helps us hours of development and design for usable components. It also improves communications between product designers, developers through a shared language, and obviously creating accessible and visual design that is on brand. And ultimately, all of this results in shipping everything faster. Well, so that's pretty much a quick overview of how we built our design system and what's in the design system. And I'll pass it to my beautiful friend Chris to talk a bit more about that.
That is my name, Chris Street. Geez, weird standing here talking to people face to face after 3 years of looking at everybody's little thumbnails on the screen. I've been at REA now for just over 6 months, and what am I about to talk about? I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. But as this part we move into now, it's all about good old return on investment and business speak. I love to see what the designers can do in Figma, but I realise I'm getting old, and Figma scares the shit out of me sometimes. So I've got a question. Actually, before I get into that, I'll just check my notes. I think it's really cool to see what other companies do when they can pull back the curtains and share what they're working on internally. I often refer this sort of stuff to Really Want This Chocolate Factory. I think it's always great when you can be invited in and see how companies work. I've got a question to begin with my small part on design systems return on investment. But who's actually Googled something like this in their career? Design system business value, ROI, how do I measure, how do I communicate value? A few people? Well, if you do, well, you don't need to, because if you do, you'll get about 188 million results on the topic called design system return on investment. There is a shitload of content out there to go through. What I've learned through my career of growing design systems is a lot of people talk about what to measure, but not a lot of people talk about how you actually measure it. I do want to correct myself when I say this part now, because 1 month ago, the lovely people over at Smashing Magazine just released a bloody article which talks about how do you actually calculate return on investment. It's quite complex. You need a bit of a math read, I feel, to try and understand how you use their calculation. But Alice today is going to show you a very simple bloody way to do it. Like I said, I was sitting on the shoulders of giants when I joined REA, and what I've learned is how we communicate our value of our design system sits around 4 pillars, and that is engagement, efficiency, adoption, and speed. When we're talking about engagement, it's all about how do we show what systems are actually using the latest version of our design system components across those 3 different platforms of web, iOS, and Android. The second pillar is efficiency. In a nutshell, that's just how do we make designers and developers go a lot faster by reusing what we already have in our platform across the different technology stacks. When it comes to the third pillar, it's adoption. That's basically your subscriber engagement. So when we ship something, how do we know that a team is actually using it? You would have seen in some of Bruce's demonstration, you might see it when Alice gives her talk as well. We've got pre-releases now that we're shipping our design system too. So we're trying to get stuff out as quickly as possible in different platforms. So we're experimenting with releasing in Figma before we actually might have it in code, just to try and get that adoption happening across our user community, designers and developers. The fourth pillar is about speed, but for us, it's more about how do we help those teams actually go faster. Did they manage to be able to get that feature out to their end users within 1 month rather than 3 months of reinventing the wheel? And this little number down here, we've saved the team from going from 3 months down to 1.5 months, is from another product manager who was in the team before I was, who helped to understand how we did that and use the data that was collected in other teams when they tracked how long it actually took them to build something and come up with that calculation. Wow, it's super fast. So that's what I learned a lot in 6 months. But now I'm just going to hand over to Alice to pull back that curve on how did we come up with some of those numbers that you saw in our slide there.
Hi everyone, I'm Alice. So I'm the senior UI developer in ConstructKit. So I work on the web platform of ConstructKit. I'm doing it for about 2 years now. So today I'm here to introduce you to Construction Worker. So this is the tool that we use to quantify how we're helping REA teams ship faster and build out their products easier. So Construction Worker is a script that gets run weekly and it calculates data on the usage of ConstructKit across all 3 platforms, so web, iOS, and Android. And then we use this data to build out an analytics dashboard. So I thought I'd start today by showing off that dashboard a little bit. So we'll jump over to our doc side. There we go, and navigate over to our analytics. So initially here we see an overview page. So here we have some at-a-glance stats of all 3 platforms of ConstructKit. And at the top here we have the elusive hours saved number that we've been talking about. And you'll actually notice we have 2. So we have cumulative hours saved and snapshot hours saved. So what's the difference? We have first up, snapshot hours saved. So this is the as at right now total across all our production systems. So if we look at our production systems, what components are being used, and based on those, how many hours have we saved? Whereas cumulative hours saved is the total across all 4 years of ConstructKit. So anytime a system starts using ConstructKit or a new component gets added to an existing system, We add up those hours saved and add to this number. So the theory behind that is if a developer adds a button, say 2 years ago, we save them time, even if they then remove it a year later. So scrolling down the page a bit now, we have some more fancy little graphs. We've got our latest version usage. So here we're showing what percentage of systems using ConstructKit are on the latest version. And that's helping us quantify that engagement, seeing which teams are actually upgrading to use the latest fanciest features. Scrolling down a bit, we have some more breakdowns on our systems, which systems use the most components, which components are being used the most. And again, that's tying back to quantifying that adoption. If we jump into one of the platform-specific pages, we do a bit of a deeper dive into this data. So again, we have those hours saved numbers up the top, a bit of a version distribution graph, some more breakdowns of systems and components. But if we scroll to the bottom, we have this changes screen. So every time construction worker gets run, we calculate what's changed since the last time we run it. So this is things like what versions have been upgraded, what components are now being used, if there's any new systems. So if we jump in here, what's cool is we can actually select a range. So this is super helpful. We can know things like in the last financial year, how many hours have we saved? I think Chris loves that one. So now that we've seen the data, let's jump back in. Oh, that's hello. Here we go. And chat a bit more about how we actually get this data. So the first step on this journey is time spent. So that's how long we actually spend as a team building out our design system components. And the question to ask here is, have we tracked time? If the answer is yes, brilliant, use that. However, if you're like us initially, we didn't do that. When we wanted to start building this out, we didn't have those hours. So fear not, GitHub history is here to save the day. So by looking at GitHub PRs, issues, commits, we're able to tell the story of how a component is being built and when. And from that, we can estimate the hours that took us. Now, we know an estimate is not exact, but remember the goal here is to visualize the impact of our design system. And an estimate will help us do that. Looking next, we've got the system data. So on the right here, you can see what we actually generate for each system using ConstructKit. So here, as an example, we have an REA system. We can see what version it's using and where that version is defined. We can also see the components it's using. So it's got foundation, so our typography, spacing, color, a text component, a card component, and a button. We also see that time spent number that I was talking about alongside. And at the bottom, we have our tags. So this helps us know if the system is production, a test system, or a native land, a main app. And on the left here, we have how we actually get this data at a high level. So with all our systems at REA stored in GitHub, we can use the GitHub search API to help us here. So we use that to search and find which systems are actually using ConstructKit. Once we know that, we perform a shallow clone. So what that means is we're getting a local copy of those systems onto our machine. With that local copy, we're now able to search through them. So we use the grep command. Now, grep is a command line tool that essentially allows you to search within files of your file system from the command line. So we search those systems and find which versions are being used from them. And we also find which files are defining components. With those files, we pass them to a Babel parser. Now, a Babel parser takes those files, it transforms them into a readable format. So we're able to pull out exactly which components are being used and where. And that's how we get the data on the right. Finally, we've got our time spent, we've got our system data, we can calculate our hours saved, the moment you've been waiting for. So we take that time spent number for each component, we times that by how many systems are using that component, and we get our hours saved for that component. Add that up for all the components, and you've got your snapshot hours saved. Now you remember I mentioned we also have cumulative. So that's where the changes data comes in. We calculate what's changed from the previous one, anything that's been added, we calculate this hours saved again, and add that to the previous number. And that's it. Thank you everyone for coming along.
Q&A. Who wants to kick it off with the first question? Got Brandon here.
I want to ask about, I'm a UX researcher, so I want to ask a question from user research perspective. How do you guys handle, or like, how does it look like in user research? User research point of view, like how do you guys, I guess, interact with the designers, or do you guys have to in-house researcher to help the UX designer when you come with the design system?
So in REA, we have a dedicated UX research function, which is fantastic. But when it comes to the design system itself, at the moment, we're looking at obviously just getting as many native components out as we can. With timeline and we're talking about these part of the talk. But another thing we're trying to solve too is web patterns. We have some inconsistency happening. But to try and understand what the problem is, how to solve that, one of our designers in the squad is going out into the field and running a discovery process and trying to understand what to answer those questions. Just following a good old fashioned design process, whether it's the double diamond or whatever you choose to do. We're kind of at that part now where we've got to unpack some of the unknowns. If you don't know, we know there's a problem, but how do we use kind of lean UX research methods with the design thinking, the process sprinkled in to try and go out to the field and engage our community. I think the beautiful thing with design systems is recruiting your users is easy because they're your friends at work and you can just tap them on the shoulder. And we're getting a lot of great feedback that way through the discovery process. Other things that we do as well that I'm really proud of that this team has set up before my time is a dedicated Slack channel as well. So I kind of classify that as user research too. So when I joined, I went through and not too far back because I didn't want to go 4 odd years through Slack conversations, but I wanted to just try and understand what sort of support requests are coming through from our consumers of the design system and see see if there's any patterns there that we should solve rather than just keep going through the same questions as well. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Obviously, we do great operations as well. We manage design systems, engage with our designers, developers, product managers that adopt our design systems. But ultimately, we have to swing, right? We have to talk about consumers, our users, right? That's with the product teams, right? Because they implement their designs, but they have full creative power to create their own product designs in each of those experiences. They need to be using the system, right? So we do a lot of heavy lifting with our end users to make sure that we hit the mark, managing their needs, hitting their jobs to be done, and that's where we get the bulk of our user research.
Thanks, Vincent. Head of research.
Question? I'm sure there's many. Come on.
I think I can carry my words. That should be fine. I think my question is, what's the next step for you? I'm really impressed, first of all. Love the work. But what's the next step in the evolution of this? It seems like a really nice, mature design system. What next for you?
That's a great question. It's actually the exact question we wanted to ask the audience.
You don't know.
We don't know, literally. So as part of this meetup, we've got a Slack community, 2,000 odd communities of people globally in the Slack. And I literally posed that question the other day: what do we do after 5 to 7 years in the design system? What's next? So we have a few ideas, and Chris might be able to have answered some of them. But yeah, literally we're on that journey now. I know there are a lot of other companies as well at a similar level, right? So we got on board, around 4 or 5 years ago, around the same time a lot of other companies did. So we are now looking at we're setting up strategy for next year. What is next? we've got a few ideas. But, yeah,
So the first thing to do to try and work out a vision is obviously to talk to your users. The second thing to do in normally when you're creating a product vision is understand the competitive market. The beautiful thing with design systems is we're not competing against other companies, but you can learn a lot more from what other design systems are doing in other businesses as well, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes. But right now, to help us create a vision, you're at the tail end of engaging our certain key stakeholders within our business to try and understand, okay, what's working, what's not, and what would they like to see 2 to 3 years from now. And going on that roadshow, we're getting a lot of really good insights into what the future of construction could be. And when I say the future of what construction could be, I think about it as 2 parts. One is the product, the components that we offer and patent documentation. So I was thinking about what's the future of our team as a service provider as well. The story that I tell is, you know, you're buying your internet, that sort of stuff. There's the telecommunication company or internet provider that gives you the internet, but then they're also there as a service provider as well. So what do they need from us, and how do we help elevate them with some services that we provide to their teams as well? We're going on that journey. It's a fun journey. Any other questions? Yeah, Brendan, wherever you want to come.
I just want to look like a developer point of view. How would a developer implement these components? So it's sort of like a React thing before, like from a web point of view. But yeah, do you like publish components that then like product teams consume? And then if so, does that mean that like all of your products are all coupled to whatever you're doing with your design system? And then for available, it's like we want to use the Smith framework or use Shiny, then you would have to publish that or they have to change. I'm just curious how that goes because I've seen some things happen previously where that was a major bottleneck and became a very big frustration point for implementing this kind of shared component library.
I mean, I believe it's already a bit of a frustration in the native land. From the web point of view, I mean, we're pretty lucky. React is pretty standard. Everyone's on it. I researched it. I was here 5 years ago. Yeah, in terms of components, yeah, we're building in React. We also have theming. So obviously, those of you all familiar with REA Group know we have multiple brands. So we've got commercials, we've got flatmates. So we build them in a way that components are able to be customized as well. So flatmates can take it and make it blue or purple or whatever they need to do. But yeah, I can probably speak more to the native side. But I think at the moment, because we're more recently developing our native system, and we have to make the decision of which language to use there. I don't know the details, but we went with one, and not all of our systems use that language. And so that's now a challenge to try and uplift all of those other systems onto that new language, which is something we're still figuring out.
Is that clear enough from the website?
Or you can do that. Yeah, that's one thing. No, exactly.
Hi, long-time user of realestate.com. But I'm really interested that you guys have a lot of metrics about like the internal impact that this has had on the productivity and everything of your teams. But I'm wondering if you've started seeing the impacts on the website itself and the like customer change, if it's actually increased like the usability or how people are using with the final product. Have you started seeing the results from this amazing work on your customer site yet?
Yeah. So, good question. So, like I said, being new to the company, what I'm learning is we have a kind of a lofty goal, which is consistency across our experiences. That does have an impact on our consumer satisfaction score. Is it easy to use? Is it accessible? is inclusive. And I think the challenging part as a design system team, when you're kind of always sort of a platform team, is what is that impact that you're actually making on that user's kind of, or that customer's journey in the front end. It's always really challenging to tie that back because you don't have multiple layers of teams and people in between you and that metric at the end. I don't know how to do it, to be honest with you, but I think it just ties back to what are we measuring as a company, and if it's easy to achieve this goal for a job to be done, how did the design system help achieve that metric that we might be capturing as an organisation through a satisfaction score? Probably didn't have an answer to your question. So I'm going to chime in. Yes.
So I'm Brennan. I'm one of the designers in what we call the customer part of the company. So it's actually dealing with the real estate agents. So we develop a lot of software for them through a product called Ignite. So it's not realestate.com for their experience. It's just kind of something a bit different. You can imagine it kind of like as a nice looking back end for real estate agents to use the front end, for example. But I think like one thing that kind of I can see the benefit from being the user of ConstructKit, and the way I guess we're seeing a few of those metrics of I guess satisfaction points coming from users is when you're taking a few designs that are completely new, and then you're starting to actually see users that immediately know how to function to use them, and just through usability testing essentially, we're just seeing in small sample sizes, let's just say 8, through a few sessions, you're just like kind of taking a quite quickly mocked up design of a few components with buttons, with text and content switches, with the interactions already embedded into the bigger prototypes. And then through that, you're already seeing quite complicated things. I work on charts and data visualization. And sometimes I think, shit, this one's probably not going to do particularly well. I'm going to end up with just some basic table kind of coming out at the end of this. But then you show them a vertically stacked double line chart showing serious buyers over similar properties for sale, but if you're using a bunch of ConstructKit components with good legibility, good linking between a lot of the time, good functionality, and I guess seeing those interactions play out through a broader and bigger component, I walk away from 8 sessions going, I can't believe that actually worked. That was extremely useful. Let's build that. And then from there, you just create a component that other teams can pick up and don't necessarily need to do as much testing with, because they know the proof's in the pudding where we've already done the testing, we've used those components, and it's been proven to actually be useful. So yeah, that's kind of maybe another way to go about it, but not necessarily like a broad team metric. Take a seat. The front one there. Yes.
Question for Alice and maybe Fun. I was just kind of, I saw you did have history and wondering if that's like developing or redesigners just like did have history that changes.
Yeah, so when we started, we actually used GitHub for everything. So GitHub has a wall like Trello. So when we started, that's what we went with. Our team was mainly developers, so it just made sense for us. So our designers, Sean will be able to tell you, would go in, create the issues, they can look at our issues. Yeah, it was a very work together GitHub feel. We've gone away from that a bit now. Yeah, we've gone away from that a bit now, but I mean, our designers know about GitHub. I'm sure most of our REA designers know what it is, but I think now there's less designers using it. I think that's, yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation, guys. I'm curious as to, on the whole sort of analytics side of things, and please forgive me if I missed this during the presentation, but I'd love to know a little bit more about what value you've seen come out of building such a detailed analytics platform in that way, and what value it's brought to the design system team.
Someone else. Take that one. Yeah, also explanation from Alice, who literally has a maths degree. So we've had a lot of success with those numbers. So from the very start, we've always expressed that, hey, that's not your accurate representation. Like, you have, it's there and it's a figure, it's something. And we've pushed that to the higher ups, to the execs. I've literally sat in some of these higher up meetings with execs and they'll ask, hey, what's your hours say number? The real, it's a number, they can understand it, here it is, it's quantifiable. So in that retrospect, I think that's probably where we've had the greatest success, is feeding it up the chain and say, hey, this is the value we've shown, And it took probably 18 months. I think with any design system, it takes at least 12 months to show that value. You've got a big investment in building a team and then showing the value. It was only 18 months mark where you actually start seeing that real value and you show it and talk about it. So it became sort of this figure and it's talked about around the office. So that's probably the most success we've had from it. That's your question. Hi guys, my name is Matt. I'm going to steal Andrew's question. I was talking with Andrew. I don't know Andrew. It was a great question, so it'll get answered. So I'm really impressed with the design system. There's clearly a lot of thought, a lot of work being done at all levels of how this actually fits and how it works. For someone who doesn't, or a team who doesn't have as much resources as REA and wants to start implement some of these principles, which bits of your process would you recommend that you cut out or truncate, or kind of what's the essential part of getting to that end outcome? Yeah.
Yeah, so before we actually introduced the native platform to the design system, I wasn't part of the design system, so actually I was outside of it. So I was working with the team, in the product team, and our developers were actually someone who wasn't in the design system team. So only about maybe a few months ago, we just actually introduced official developers and native designers in the team. So I think the three key principles that I would say is you want to make sure you have an engaged designer, and if you're working in web, obviously you're web developers. If you're working in mobile spaces, mobile developers. So you just want to make sure you have people that are passionate about the design system and understood the value of it. And at the time that I was working with developers, it was important for me to have good relationships with native developers, because obviously these are people that are putting extra hours on top of what they're already working. So by building that relationship, we could then align our goals. We understood if we set up a native design system without actually being an official team, we could then eventually bring this value to the higher ups, and we can then make a case for it and prove it to them that, hey, actually, with this design system that we're building without even the support of the business, we could actually already save the amount of hours of development and also design. And then that's slowly then being heard by other designers and developers, and just by being proactive in that way, it helps to encourage other designers and developers to also contribute back. So I guess the key is having an engaged designers, developers, and be as open as possible for a contribution.
I'll add a little bit to rather sort of three things that were our core principles that we kept as our mission. So we saw a bit tonight around got a design library of assets. So in Figma, we've got coded components, and we have documentation. So let's take the button as an example. We make sure those three things, so design assets, code, and the documentation, is kept in sync. We did that. We're already at a point now where we're starting to explore, okay, can we release a component just in the design space so we get a test and build? The first sort of 3 or 4 years, that was crucial. We did explore whether we released the component in design and not code or not docs. And then we get it out there and first thing, release this design component. Developers like, where's the code? And then we release the component in design and code. Where's the usage guidelines? And where's documentation? So that was like crucial. We found that really keep those three things in sync.
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm really keen to hear about like the contribution part. So you guys mentioned about other teams contributing to the design system. I know when we first sort of thought about it, we were like, well, we're only a team of like 2 people. We can't possibly build this thing out. So we're going to have to allow like a bit of a federated model. How does the model work at REA now? How do you allow for those teams to contribute, and how do you ensure the quality that they're?
It's a great question. We're working on it. I'll let my thoughts and anyone can also share. I've researched contribution models and design systems for like the last 4 years. I personally don't think anybody has solved the problem. If someone has, please share it. So we're talking about the rest of our 200 developers and our 75 designers contributing back to the system. It's the first conversation we have with everyone. Say, hey, wouldn't it be great if you contributed that component? Because there are a designer in our Slack, in our support channel, might say, hey, I love this new component. Here it is, I've designed it, or it needs to be in code now. And then they say, oh, can your team make it? You're the design system, can you make it? And we say, it would be great if you could contribute it to us and contribute it back to the greater system. I've found it always hits a wall where that product feature team, we call it, never have the time to do it. To build it into a component, so in terms of what we have in the design system, with making accessibility, so nothing goes out the door without accessibility and test it. It's got design, code, and docs. So it takes a fair while to build a component by building it properly. Sometimes we speak to these product feature teams and they'll say, no, we can't really build it to the standard we need it in the system. So we're just going to sort of hack it as such and get it into production. So we've created a contribution model inside of Figma or guidelines, how the step process on how to do it. We've had a few components contributed, but yeah, I still have yet to find the solution to that problem. If anyone has it, I'd love to see it. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
I think you just got to be honest and say no team will ever contribute something from start to finish with the level of rigor and quality around it. That's just reality, and I think you're dreaming if that ever happens. To be honest with you, I think the second thing too is like, what is the definition of contribution? It's different for different people. It's different for different teams. At REA, we're hearing a lot of designers and developers saying we want to contribute. We've got 20% of our time dedicated to federating back in. The best quote I heard was, Mum and Dad won't let us. That's the PMs and like product managers and delivery people. Because it is like, yeah, thanks, we got to use your system, but now on to the next thing, put our own KPIs or whatever targets they need to hit as well. So I think it's just, at the moment, like I said, no team will ever contribute something that's perfect, gold-plated. The definition of contributions locked in between different people, and if people do want to contribute, it's not targeting the designers and developers, it's targeting more of those people who control the rigor around what gets delivered as well. And how do you start those conversations with your delivery teams and say, how do we solve this problem together? It's a good employee experience. They want to be back in the platform that they love so much and use. How do we make that happen? Any other questions? Oh, we got one to the back. Wait, I don't know.
Hi everyone. I'm the UX designer, but I care a lot about content, and I'm just curious about your relationship with content writers or designers at REA.
Let me just actually show you the homepage of our doc site.
Why did you go to dark mode then?
Yeah.
Does it just look better in dark mode?
I feel like the contrast is better than the previous one. I'm actually, yes, obviously it's our homepage. We should do it together, that should faster. We've got animations, which is our colours, our icons, radius, basic typography, fun stuff. Components, we showed you buttons, for example, alert. But we do have a content section. So we have one dedicated content designer in REA at the moment. We're building out the team. We've got some guidelines here, on the content, how we want to convey our sort of our content, the words go on button with this. I think we're building that capability. Like there's obviously a need for marketing teams like Spotify or Twitter and other roles for content designers. So yeah, we're probably early on the stage. Put up some content guidelines and we're working on it. So that's sort of where we're at the moment. Any other questions?
Hello. Sorry. You mentioned earlier that the amount of time the systems team put into a component is probably a lot more than the engineering and product teams are putting in. And so I'm just curious about the equation you're using to calculate the amount of time you're saving. You said that was a bit of an estimate. I feel like that is a really great value. And I was curious if you were planning to sort of like try and refine that, because if you sort of could get that to a point where that was a better approximation, I could see that being really valuable to the community at large.
Yeah, so it is something we thought about. So we had card in our backlog for about a year, I think, to apply almost like a discount on the hours that we spend. Because obviously we spend a lot of time, as Sean said, thinking about the build radius, thinking about the colour we use, doing a lot of discovery, thinking about the technology, thinking about the accessibility. There's a lot to it. So we do spend more time than a product team probably would on a month, for example. So we did plan on sort of applying a discount there to make it a bit more accurate, but as time went on, dare say, it kind of just got a bit late. It's the best way to put it. I think ideally we would, but whether that would change that number or we just change it going forward, so from now on we charge less. But then to think about it as well, we haven't ever added time to those hours that we spent whenever we done bug fixes or changed them or uplifted them. We keep it at that same number. So we don't necessarily account for all the extra time we spend maintaining. So I think there's a balance there. It kind of works out long term. It is still an estimate, but it's a good estimate to help us see the impact we're having.
Cool. All right. Well, that might be it if there's no more questions. We'll just wrap it up here. This is our website, DesignOps.lol. The .com is taken. Naturally, the .lol is the next option. Check it out. We've got interviews on there, our previous talks. Yeah, have a look. And we also have a Slack community, so jump in there, feel free to join. I think there's a few thousand other people sort of around the globe chatting in there on the daily, which is awesome. These similar conversations, I literally wrote in a general channel this week, where do you go after 5 years of design system? Like what's next? And there's sort of good answers. So cool. Well, I hope you've enjoyed tonight. We certainly enjoyed telling the story. Let's continue the conversation. A few of us are going to go to the Cherry Tree Hotel. Like what I did there. It's about a 5-minute walk, so yeah, feel free to join us and continue the conversation. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.